guys, this is Amber. I'm a mom of 11 kids and we live in New York City, and we got some really sad news, and I've just been really stunned, and I haven't been making content a lot recently because I just have been stunned. Like, I didn't see it coming at all. So I'm going to tell you the news we got and what's going on. On April 13th, we got a letter from our neighbor, and he said he was going to basically sue us if we continued to practice. And it's not just like practice like after hours, like you're really only supposed to practice from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. It wasn't that. He had like no tolerance for any of our practice at all because he said it was disturbing him and it was a nuisance. Legally, I don't think he had grounds because I've seen a lot of cases. Like there was somebody that tried to sue these two Manus players. They went to the Manus school and they were pianists, and they were two sisters, and the judge said the person that was suing them basically said, oh, you know, the pain and suffering of having to hear them practice is just, it's, you know, my mental health is waning or whatever. And the judge said, you know what, no, because these girls go to Manus School of Music, and whatever mental health struggles you're having with them practicing is less important than them not being able to further themselves in music, so they get to practice. So anyway, that person lost the lawsuit, and I've seen another judgment where the judge says specifically, you know, listening to people practice is just one of the inconveniences you have to get used to in a big city, because I mean, this is a musical city and it does seem to zealously guard its musicians. Another example is our piano accompanist. She lives in an apartment, so there are people on the bottom, people on the sides complaining, and they tried to get her out of the apartment because she was all day long. She had students coming, she obviously played for accompaniment, and she practiced herself. So it was probably like 8 hours of piano playing, and they tried to get her out, and it was not, they said no, you know, the judge said no, she got to stay. So I've never heard of a situation where somebody actually won against a musician in New York City, unless they're being like obnoxious after 10 and all this stuff. Now, we did not know the law there was a time when we've gone a little bit over not understanding the law, but anyway, that's a side point. Whatever the case, the guy said he's going to sue us. And on some levels, the process can be the punishment in that, you know, we have to get a lawyer, we have to go to court and all these things. Really, his biggest complaint is the kids playing piano, which is kind of ironic because they don't play piano nearly as often as they should. They're mostly string players. They're supposed to practice 20 minutes of piano a day. Barely can I get them to practice that. And we have piano lesson once a week. That's not like, you know, the girls of Manus, or that's not even like our piano accompanist who's playing 8 hours a day. This is like very infrequent. And recently he's even complaining, he's like, we have an electric piano down in the bottom level, and he's like, oh, I heard that electric piano twice this week. Like, you know, like, and it's low. And so anyway, thankfully our pastor's a lawyer, and he looked at the decibels and everything. He's like, no, there's no way. You do not have a case. I mean, what's so crazy is I've been in situations where there was a trumpet player. Like, my mom and dad had a condo, and there was a trumpet player, and he was professional. He practiced every day. Scales, pieces. I mean, it was like every room of our house you could hear this trumpet. And he had a parrot that like knew all the trumpet songs and knew the scales, and so the parrot would try and sing with the trumpet. And like, I mean, it was kind of annoying, but my parents were never like, we're gonna sue you. Like, it's just, anyway, so the other thing that's weird about this situation is that we are quieter than we've ever been because Josiah got married. And what used to happen when Josiah was in our house was that Elijah would often be practicing upstairs in the bedroom that Josiah and Elijah shared. One of them, usually Josiah, would be practicing in the living room, which is closer to where the guy next door that's trying to sue us is. But he's been gone for he got married late December, so he's been gone for like 4 months. We've tried to accommodate this guy. Our piano has insulated studio foam stuck in the back of it. We just have an upright. We bought these really expensive casters to try and dampen the sound. Still, this guy's like, I'm gonna sue you, I'm gonna sue you. I felt, so we got this and we're like, oh, I felt really confident that this guy had no case, especially after reading all the cases where the judges are like, no, this is a musical city. We have musicians here. Sorry, you have to deal with it. Oh, in fact, no, so this guy, the suing guy, if Enoch was practicing violin for like 20 minutes in the living room, he would send the police with a noise complaint. So the police would come over and they'd be like, yeah, we have a noise complaint. And he'd be like, yeah, it's my son, my 8-year-old son. He's practicing violin. And I was like, are we allowed to like practice violin in the apartment? And you know what the policeman said? Of course you can practice violin. If you couldn't, there wouldn't be band. I was like, yeah, like basically all these arts and music schools all over the city, if kids were like, you know, if there had to be the silence of death in an apartment, nobody, you know, they wouldn't exist. That's crazy. Anyway, I wasn't really afraid of the lawsuit. I was afraid of the process of the lawsuit, having to get a lawyer, having to do all this stuff, you know, process being the punishment. But I was really confident that, especially since we're at strings, I've got foam in the back of the piano, we're trying, you know, not trumpets, we're not mariachis, you know, it could be a lot worse. But yeah, anyway, so this guy's like, no, I'm gonna sue you. Not a problem. But at the end of the letter, he says, oh, and I'm informing your landlord about the situation. He's complained to our landlord before, and we've talked to our landlord. We're like, look, this guy complains about everything. The way we shut the door, the way we walk up and down the steps in our apartment. He complains about everything. If the kids are like talking in the backyard, you know, his wife will slam the door. Like I'm like, these people, I think they need to be in a retirement community. You know what I mean? Where children are not allowed. It's like, anyway, so he tells our landlord about this. And that was my biggest concern, that the landlord would be like, oh, you know, these problem tenants. And maybe, who knows, maybe he was threatening to sue the landlord. And the landlord has been really cool with us. Landlord had a big family, so he understands noise, you know. But at the same time, the landlord works in Seattle now. And the landlord no longer works at Columbia University, where he used to work, which is right, you know, up the street. And so having this kind of burdensome brownstone in Manhattan maybe wasn't exactly necessary anymore. And then, you know, the final straw potentially being our neighbor next door, who is a church planter trying to get a family evicted. It just blows me away. So anyway, so he tells our landlord about it, and we're like, well, you know, hopefully our landlord understands, you know, that this guy is just really, really sensitive about every little thing. On the 15th, this is, what was it, April 15th? It was April 15th, tax day. So April 15th, I get an email, and our landlord's like, you know, we're thinking about our plans, and we're going to sell the brownstone. So you need to be evicted or vacated or whatever the word is, you know, leave a lease in 90 days. And we're like, oh. So we live in a very expensive brownstone. We did not set out to rent an expensive brownstone. We just every time we looked anywhere that was close to the kids' music school, where we wouldn't be in a 2-hour train ride or whatever, everything we were looking at was just very expensive or too small for our family. We even tried, like, maybe we can squeeze into a 3-bedroom, but no, you know, like, the reason why this person even gave it this time of day, I think, was because it was 5 bedrooms, seemed big enough for our family. And it was $9,800, and then we rented the bottom level, and that was an additional $2,500. So grand total, we're renting every month $12,300, which is actually a steal of a deal, if you can believe it, for being anywhere on the island of Manhattan, being not so far from the music schools, and also, you know, not dealing with an apartment situation. That was what I was trying to avoid. That's why I was like, okay, we need to not have an apartment situation, because in San Francisco we had an apartment situation where we had people on the bottom, people on the top, complaining to the same landlord. Our next door neighbor owns his place, and our landlord is, you know, he just owns this place that we are fully living in ourselves. And so I was just blown away, because you financially, you know, everyone's like, oh, you should move to the Bronx, you should move to Long Island, you should, like, or Queens or whatever. The problem is that to move, you need to continue paying rent where you are. And then there used to be also a broker's fee. I think they voted to get that ditched, so there should not be a broker's fee anymore by the time we'd have to move. But there was a very expensive broker's fee, and then also there's obviously the first month's rent and the deposit. So, I mean, you put all those numbers together, plus moving expenses. You know, we're probably looking at $12,000, $14,000, $15,000, and you'd be surprised how hard it is to save up $15,000 when you're paying $12,300 in rent. We had some savings, and just little by little, just the city, and I've heard other families that have come here, the exact same thing happens, where you underestimate how crazy expensive the city is. It's so expensive, everything. Everything is like twice the price. A hot dog, everything, it's twice the price. Parking at Costco, $12. Like everything, like things you do for free in other cities. No, it's expensive here. So just the madness of the city has just like. So I spent the last chunk of savings that we had on the pre-college Juilliard tuition. That was the last little, and we have a good scholarship and all this stuff, but still, you know, there's thousands of dollars to pay, over 10,000 actually, for our kids, and they split up in payments throughout the year and so forth. But that, my last chunk, you know, I put towards that pre-college Juilliard tuition, and like we are just able to pay. It's like a little hamster wheel. You know, we're able to pay rent and buy food and like pay the music lessons, and you know, maybe buy a string if it pops and some rosin, and like that's it. That is it. That's all we've got. You know, we don't have any extra. We're not saving for savings. We're just surviving, paycheck to paycheck, surviving, which you should not be doing. I do not advise that. That is not good financial planning. They're probably going to use this video in some like financial planning college course where it's like, look at how bad these people are. Don't be like that. Or like Dave Ramsey is going to be like, this is what you should not be. So we just have nothing. We have nothing in reserve. Plus we're also not like the A renters because our credit isn't great. Now we have made every credit card payment on time. All the things that are on a credit report are like every on time. So it's green, 100%. You know, we paid everything on time. We pay our rent always on time, like the day before. Everything's on time, but we have $37,000 in credit card debt, which, I mean, it's hard to explain how that happens, but it happens little by little, and then all of a sudden we owe our management company like probably $14,000. Now that's not on a credit report either, and they're not charging us interest. They probably should be, but they're not. So we are just drowning, and just because everything I've made from social, I've had to be like we eat, we pay rent, you know. It's not like I have this superfluous amount. It's like, should I pay the management company or should I go to Disneyland? It's like, should I buy broccoli or should I, you know, like, so it's like, look, we're buying broccoli. And yeah, I mean, people will be like, oh, you should just buy beans and rice. It's like, yeah, probably, but at the same time, it's like the building blocks of our kids' brains and everything that's going on with them is kind of like what they're eating. And I don't want to skip on the fruits and vegetables and, you know, like yogurt, and I guess you're like, well, you can make your own yogurt, and I could, but like time, anyway, time is hard to come by with all these kids and all this stress and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm trying, and we almost never go out to eat. I sometimes do go out to eat if we can make a video about it and like make some money off of it, but that's it. That's the only time we go out to eat. We are just like strapped. I don't know what to do. I feel like, I will say, when I read the email from our landlord that's like, okay, you know, I'm evicting you, I didn't even know fully what it said. It just said update on plans, you know, that was the subject, and it just came as like a notification on my phone, and I was like, oh, that was so, I just knew what this was about before I knew what it was about, you know. And my face, just for the first 30 seconds, just got so hot. I just remember like my whole life like flashing for my eyes. I know it's like not that big of a deal. Like, we're not like, you know, like no one died, you know what I mean? Like, it could be so much worse. I know, I need to get this in perspective, but I just, like, we fought and spent everything we had and worked so hard, you know. And I just saw, like, I saw that email, I was like, oh. And the first thing was just absolute just distress. But then like 30 seconds later, you know, this is gonna sound kind of gross, but it's like almost like a zit popped, you know what I mean? Like the kind of the relief of like, okay, this is over. And I've just been so enormously stressed out trying to keep this going, and you know, trying to help the kids, you know, succeed in music. And a long time ago, when we were at our violin teacher in San Diego's studio, my daughter's friend, her dad was French Canadian, and with his French Canadian accent, he said, you know, Mark, classical music is a rich man's sport. And Mark was like, yeah, we're making it work out. And I guess the thing I really did not foresee was that it's not even the lessons that are so backbreaking financially, which I thought, you know, back when I went from paying $20 a lesson to $100 a lesson to $150 to $200. Some lessons, the most expensive lesson we purchased is $390 for 1 hour lesson with a teacher. It's not even the lessons. It's like the proximity. It's the proximity to the music pinnacle. And I almost feel like Icarus, is he the guy that, the Greek legend where he like flew too close to the sun and his wings his wings melted, the wax in his wings melted. And I guess I feel almost like that, like you know, it's like, well, you know, we'll do this and then we'll do this and and it's like, I guess on some levels, like Juilliard, the Juilliard School in New York City is kind of like the sun of classical music, and you know, like the pinnacle. And you know, unless you're really wealthy or you live in a rent-controlled apartment because like somebody, you know, 40 years ago lived here or something that was related to you, it's just too expensive for normal people. I should have figured that out a little sooner. I guess I figured it out, but before I could do anything about it, you know, after we were just completely out of savings. Like, we were at like a Planet Hollywood party, and I was asking one of the moms there, I was like, oh, what do you do? You know, and she's like, oh, I'm an investment banker. I was like, oh, that's cool. What does your husband do? I think maybe he's a mechanic, you know, it kind of looks like a man's man. She's like, oh, he's a hedge fund manager. I'm like, okay, we are out of our league. What are we doing here? This is not the city for normal people. And it is the city for normal people, but you have to have like government housing, you have to have like, or like rent control, you have to have a family that's been here, you know, 40, 50 years when things were cheaper. That's just like, you just like inherited their, you know, cheap apartment. Those are the people that New York City is for. It's not for us, I guess, you know. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to try. Like, for instance, there's a kind of nice place in Queens, in Flushing, and it was sort of affordable. It was just under $5,000, which is still expensive, but for this area, it's cheaper. And it basically hit Zillow and left Zillow within the same day. It just like, boom. You could tell that the desirability of that apartment being inexpensive and somewhat accessible in the city was just sky high. And it's like, you know, here we are, not the most desirable tenants. We are a big family. We still have 10 kids that live with us, more or less. You know, Pearl, Sundays at the dorm, Sundays at home. We play music, which can be annoying. And we make, you know, probably enough to say like, hey, we make enough for this $5,000 apartment, but borderline, you know. Here, you're supposed to make, what is it, 40 times the rent. Obviously, our landlord made an exception for us. But, I mean, I can see why. I can see why you're supposed to make 40 times the rent to rent anything around here. So even 5,000, I don't know. So 40 times 5,000, you're supposed to be making 200,000 to be able to afford that apartment. And yeah, that's a lot of money. I don't know if we even qualify for that. So it's a real dog-eat-dog world around here. Mark's saying that some of his coworkers, they live out in the affordable part of Long Island. I think the less affordable part is kind of closer because in other words, travel. It's a 2-hour ride. And it's like, the thing is that, you know, Mark works in Midtown. He works by not the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building. Empire State Building. And the kids, of course, are, you know, basically coming to the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you know, several times a week for lessons. Obviously, Elijah comes several times a day to the, you know, to Juilliard. And just, we basically would be living, and so we'd still have to do some busking because we're still paying for lessons, still paying the Juilliard tuition, so many extra things that we're still paying. And so we would be basically adding like a 2-hour travel, you know, from the affordable bits. We've been looking in Brooklyn. There's just nothing, like, here's the crazy thing. There's nothing like this, where you get the whole floors. There's people above you, people below you. And it's like, already in a situation where a single owner, we're renting his whole place, we're dealing with, you know, lawsuit man. How in the world you know, I'm still looking. We are still looking. We're also signing up for, I guess there's like a thing, I don't know, maybe because we have a lot of kids we would qualify, you know, because like the poverty level or whatever, certain percentage, you can qualify for housing assistance, and I don't know what that means. And I know it's like, oh, well, you made bad choices, so, you know, you shouldn't be burdening the government. But in general, pretty much everyone that's in the New York Housing Authority situation, there's some bad choices. Everybody, you know, it's like, well, I was a drug addict. No, I'm not. No, I'm trying to find help. That's why there's that safety net of, okay, let's try and house these people who have made bad decisions. So, you know, we're applying for stuff. Basically, on July 15th, we are going to have nowhere to go. We were like Cortez, you know, we burned the ships, we sold our house, we got rid of everything, we have nothing, you know, we own nothing except for instruments and kids, you know, that's all we've got. Unlike Cortez, we do have a little dinghy. We have our trailer parked in upstate New York, and so if something miraculous doesn't happen, either with some like Robert Moses building in NYCHA, something in Flushing where, you know, the 400 people that are trying to get that one place, like we can get, like somehow they compassion on us or something, I don't know, or something like that, like who knows, you know, something like that could happen. But there's just such like desirability for the city, and it's like, I understand that, but the city is not, it's not like they show it in the movies, you know, and it's not what it was. For instance, case in point, the artsy people, like the artists and this and that, you think like, oh, you know, New York City is for artists. It's like, well, it was for artists. You know, what happened was there were factories in Soho, and manufacturing it evaporated. Like they stopped doing manufacturing. So there were these empty, kind of lofty buildings in Soho, and so the artists were like, oh, well, that would be a great place for my art, you know, to hang up. And so they had these art galleries, but then not millionaires, but billionaires were like, oh, we like these high ceilings, and so they converted them into living spaces, and like out with the artists and with the, you know, and then they're like East Village, it was like, oh, this is where like punk rock was born, and like all these things. And it's like, yes, but it's also where NYU is, and I feel like what happens is where the artists go, the billionaires follow, you know. And so it's like, so it's becoming a city not for millionaires but for billionaires more and more. You know, that's reflected in, I mean, already the classical music world struggles with a bit of like pretension, you know, and then you add New York City to that classical music world, and there's kind of like an exponential pretentiousness that kind of like overfloweth. And I'm not in love with that, you know. I feel like historically classical music was the real OGs, like Bach. Like he wrote the Brandenburg concertos as so I've heard at least, as like a job, like a resume. And he didn't even get the job, you know, like that's crazy. Or, you know, go Handel, you know, when he wrote Handel's Messiah, was not a wealthy guy. Mozart, you know, buried in a pauper's grave. Like, it's just, these people were not the elites. They were not the snobs. The people, they worked for the elite snobs, but they were not. Like, originally, the soul of classical music was so much more edgy and the hoi polloi and the everyday people. And it's kind of being overtaken by, like, the only people that can do it are the children of surgeons. And case in point, my son goes to Juilliard, my second oldest son, and I think he said something like his friend's parents sold one of their houses, $5 million houses in New Jersey, so she could have an apartment in New York City. Like, one of their houses. Like, I just like it boggles me. It boggles my mind, you know. I'm just like, wow. I would just like one house, not, you know, several. So there's just like, there's a different economy here. There's a different mindset. There's a different world. And I just wasn't prepared for it. We were warned by the French-Canadian friend, but I just wasn't prepared for it. And we tried. We really tried. I left it all out on the field. What's gonna happen? Miraculously, something could work out. Like, I'm not ruling that out. But at the same time, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. So I feel like God can use the suey guy, the guy that wants to sue us next door. He can use the landlord that's like, you know, I've kind of had it with the guy complaining about the kids practicing. I don't want to be in New York City anymore. I'm in some house. Like, he can use that God can use that to move us around. He can use the destitution of our bank account to move us somewhere else. And I mean, if we had, you know, a certain amount of couple and, you know, not hundred, if we had the right amount of thousands to move. So the thing is, I feel we could, if some landlord was like, yes, I'm gonna let you live in my place, like the same miraculously that happened, you know, we would basically just barely by the skin of our teeth eke into something. And then what? Then we're hours in a train, we're still just barely making it, and we have no support network here. We have no family, but we have nobody here. Like, we're just loners here. We found a nice church and so forth, but we have no support network. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what to do. Parole is fine. She has a scholarship that provides housing. I am worried about Elijah. He basically went into the Juilliard financial aid office and he's like, oh, my parents are getting evicted. They're probably going to be like quasi-homeless, you know, starting on the July 15th. And I think what they told him was like, oh, we can take out loans. But that's like $25,000. And Elijah is such a businessman. When he was a little boy, he would make buttered noodles. Like, he would cook pasta and put butter and salt and pepper in there. And then he would go out to the backyard and he would sell the other kids in our family the buttered noodles. And they would buy them. And like, I would make the buttered noodles for free. But no, he's just such a good salesman. He can sell kids noodles that don't need noodles, you know? His original cello teacher gave him a book about the story of Gregor Piatigorsky, who basically from 12 years old kind of found a way to make it on his own playing his cello, like in the winter of Moscow. Gregor Piatigorsky is one of the more amazing cellists. I've always kind of connected Elijah with that kind of chutzpah. Like, I feel like Elijah and Gregor Piatigorsky are similar in some ways. So if there was anybody that could figure it out, I think it's Elijah. The problem is that he, like I said, he's a businessman. So he's looking at 25,000-ish. I think that's what he said, which is why I wanted us to be here, because I was like, okay, as the kids are in college, we can save them from basically being 100,000, even if they're getting a full scholarship. And he doesn't have a full scholarship, but with the state aid and the federal aid and all that stuff, it's pretty close. He's almost there. 25,000, and that's only for 9 months. Okay, so divided by 9 equals $2,777 a month. So that's a lot of money for like half a room and a bathroom and like no kitchen. Like, I don't even know if you have your own bathroom. So he's looking, he's like, okay, this doesn't make sense. There's studios for $1,600. I could maybe get a bunk bed and room with somebody, you know, and pay $800. There's also other kids that have apartments. And I mean, I guess it's good that we were at least here for the first year, because that way he's made friends. Like, it's kind of impossible to come to a school for the first time and just be like, hey, you want to be my roommate before school year even starts. Like, you kind of need the friend base. Oh, you know, I know who you are. You're not going to unalive me in the middle of the night. Yes, I'll share a bunk with you in a studio somewhere. So I'm glad that he has some bearing. He understands the city. This city is hard to get used to at first. I think Elijah's going to be okay. He basically needs help with his housing. He's thinking like, oh, if I can get 5 students, maybe he'll do some busking. If we have to leave, seems likely based on the situation. We're going to try everything we can within reason, but I don't see a way forward. I just feel like this is maybe from God, and I know that sounds so weird because I feel like us coming here, like, God opened the door miraculously, somebody being willing to rent to us, and you know, we definitely did not make the 40 times income requirement, and we are just not your A-rated tenants. We're nobodies and not rich, and you know, just not the sort of person you want living in your house necessarily. Then we also have 3 kids in Juilliard pre-college: Chloe, Noah, and Naomi, and all the pre-college kids were crying, you know, because they worked so hard to get in there, and it's such a good program. There's something about Juilliard that's so good, and when you're around other kids that are, you know, so good at what they do, I think it kind of propels you into excellence. It can also propel you into snobbery, so be careful. Yeah, it has a way of propelling you into excellence, and that's good, and I'm really gonna miss that. But before we left San Diego, our teacher, Mr. Seitlin, he said, Russian guy, I cannot replicate his Russian accent, it's so cool. He said, you know, these big name conservatories, this is before he went to San Francisco Conservatory of Music, he says these big name conservatories, you know, everyone kind of flocks to them thinking it's going to really help their kid, but really it's the teacher. And I will say that's the truth on some levels. but the camaraderie of excellence is really good. So if we do have to leave, which seems likely, we'll miss that. Things like, you know, being able to play in an orchestra of kids that are really top-notch, the music theory, the choir, the ear training. And Naomi actually was able to finish all the composition classes she was able to take. She, you know, went through them all. But at the same time, here's what's interesting about music. Music is like language. So if you, let's say you could look into the future and you knew your kid really wanted to learn French, you wouldn't wait until college to be like, well, you lucky girl are gonna love studying French in college. Because by the time you're 18, that 18 to 22 range, your brain is, you know, pretty crusty. Like it's not forming as much as it was. There still is some formation of the brain until 25, but it's much less robust. Really, if you want your kid to learn French, you know, drop them off. Of course, I wouldn't recommend this, but you know, you could drop them off in Paris at like age 3 and come back 4 months later and they would have forgotten English and be speaking, you know, perfect French. I mean, for a 3-year-old, and understand grammar on a level that they could never duplicate in advanced master's French in college. So music is kind of like that. It's something that you want to learn young, and obviously all the kids that are in Juilliard College, they all learned young. You know, there was a lot of youthful learning there. They're kind of just, in college, you're basically just getting the finishing flourishes of their musicianship, because most of that musicianship had to be instilled in them way before they set foot in Juilliard College. That's why I feel like Juilliard Pre-College is kind of where it's at, because you're able to instill in your kid this really lofty knowledge while their brains are just so, you know, plastic and so movable, and so they learn so much. And so our situation, like, yes, we sold our house, we spent all our savings, we're like, oh, we threw it, we burned the ships, we were just like crazy people. But think about what our kids have gained. Even if we do have to go to a city where there is, we haven't come back, you know, empty-handed. I feel like, for instance, let's just take Noah, for example. He went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music and the Juilliard Pre-College program. So he went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music for 3 years, and for 2 of those years, he got to study with Scott Pingle, who is the principal bassist of the San Francisco Symphony. Then he spent 3 years at Juilliard Pre-College, and he's gotten to study with the principal bassist, Tim Cobb, of the New York Philharmonic. That knowledge doesn't go away. And like, I think about, like, you know, financial planning. It's funny, my brother-in-law, Mark's brother, is actually a financial planner. I don't imagine, like, he's like, probably like, you guys are crazy. And I understand, we are crazy. And I mean, hindsight, it's like, would I go back and not sell our house and not do all the crazy things? But then Noah misses out on that experience, or Naomi misses out on, she's been at 3 years at San Francisco Conservatory of Music, 3 years at Juilliard Pre-College too. These kids have really sucked up a really amazing education in a time when their minds are really plastic. And, you know, if we had dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's, and, you know, I die at, like, let's say 90. Obviously we have so many kids, so, you know, we sell our house and we partition out the inheritance, and there's basically enough for everyone to go on a vacation to Hawaii. Or it's like rewind, and we invest in, basically Noah was from the age of 9 to the age of 15, invest in his youth and his knowledge in something he can take with him the rest of his life. I don't know. I mean, obviously, what would have been better is if we were just rich. Then we could have done it all. The vacation to Hawaii when I'm dead at 90, and also the Juilliard Pre-College experience. But, you know, if you can't be rich, if you have to pick one or the other, I don't know. So I don't necessarily feel like it was a mistake. Of course, you can't ever go back in time. I feel like they've learned a lot. I feel like we've gained a lot, and I feel like I've learned a lot of knowledge. You know, I do feel like I understand more what Mr. Seitland is saying, that you don't necessarily need a conservatory. So let me just, like, you know, every city is different, but I know San Diego, so San Diego, it does not have a conservatory, and that's why we were like, let's go somewhere with a conservatory. So San Diego has the San Diego Youth Symphony. I think it's pretty good. Unfortunately, the pandemic ruined a lot of these 40, 50-year-old, I don't know how many, I think San Diego Youth Symphony is one of the oldest youth symphonies in the country, but unfortunately the pandemic really wiped away a lot of institutions, but I think it's still thriving. You know, those other teachers in San Diego that will teach chamber music, so then you go to one teacher for chamber music, and then you find a really good violin teacher in the city, and then so you can kind of a la carte, buffet style, create your own kind of pre-college situation. Like we have a piano teacher in San Diego that taught such high music theory that when Josiah auditioned for the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, he had to take a test, and they put him in almost the tippy top level of theory because he knew so much. It was actually too high because there were some pieces of knowledge, but he knew so much from our piano teacher that did not just teach piano but also taught theory, and she went to USC School of Music. So I think, you know, now that I know what goes into a conservatory education, I think I could probably draw from other things, and it wouldn't just be like a one-stop shop where it's like, oh, we, you know, go to Juilliard and we learn all these things. It's going to be several nights a week trying to, you know, put the happy meal together. Yeah, I don't think it's impossible. Obviously, we're just going to try and get our feet under us. I probably will try and find teachers right away in San Diego if we do in fact have to move, which is where I'm planning on moving. So us staying in a trailer park is kind of like not going to work long term, because when we first went to San Francisco, we stayed in a trailer park in South San Francisco, and because the kids were practicing music and because, you know, they were being kids. I think one of them, I think Naomi, after she worked with Enoch on the violin, she pushed him around the laundry cart in the laundry room, and that was like a super no-no, and so we ended up getting evicted out of the trailer park in South San Francisco. So, and then obviously, like, now our kids are more mature, so there probably would be less of that. But like an apartment in San Diego, or like a house in San Diego, and it's like, will anybody rent to us? I don't know. I don't know if anybody will rent to us. I'm praying they will. I mean, we're a big family and not very rich. Like I said, same problems in New York, but and I know that San Diego is a hard rental market, but it's less hard. Nothing is quite like this rental market. So, and that's why us being accepted for this place was such a miracle. I was like, it's just like, it doesn't just happen. So that's my thought, is I'm praying that we can be accepted for an apartment or a house and earn enough to pay for it soon. And in the meantime, we'll live homeless-ish in the trailer. You know, which it's like, oh, that's, you know, it's not so pitiful, because, you know, I mean, it could be worse. Like, I've watched documentaries of like a mom with 2 kids, and she was homeless living in a car, and there's like a parking lot where they like let you park at night so you're safe, and you know, like, and she showed how she made the beds, and just like, at least in the trailer there's beds, and it's like, I really before I wanted to do like travel trailer, like for fun, not for like, oh, we don't have a house anymore. What I wanted to do, because our kids are bigger and the little, you know, enclaves that we've put them in the past, they don't fit very well. I wanted to, you can get like a custom pop top. It's actually surprisingly not that expensive for your van. Like, we have a big old 13 I don't know, mini passenger van. You can take off the top of the van, like a pop camper, and so we could have a couple kids in just like a full-size bed out there, and that would be really nice for the space, really free up some of the areas in the trailer. But that was like, I mean, I just, all this whole time, you know, while we were here, before we came here, just hoping that something would work out. You know, there was like, before we came here, there was like the potential reality TV show. Oh, that's another update. So we were on the TLC show, Big Family, Big City. It didn't go as I expected it to. Honestly, I loved TLC from 2005. I remember watching the Duggars and the Bates, and actually I bought all the Duggars DVDs, and I loved just like watching them like make tater tot casserole, and you know, but reality TV has changed so much. And unless, like, for certain people it's the same. So like the Baldwins, because they're famous, or with Love, Megan, you know, the Megan of Sussex who married Prince Harry on Netflix. Like there are some famous people who just get to be normal and put flowers in hummus, or you know what I mean, like, or you know, like the Baldwins, like, oh, look, we're eating pizza in our, you know, Hampton's house. Or you can just, if you're famous, you can just be normal. But if you're like just nobodies like us, there's something has to be a little bit dysfunctional. There needs to be some conflict. So I got the villain edit, which is a thing. If you look up the villain edit, you'll see, you know, so for instance, there were things that, no shade on TLC, I understand. Rage bait is the only way to get views, and I didn't understand this until I accidentally rage baited. And then, so I would like, I started on TikTok in 2020, and like I would get 200 views, and you know, I would just be like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. And, you know, people are like, oh, that's nice. You know, 200 views of nice. But then my husband was bringing the laundry down like 13 flights of stairs. And I was like, oh, that'd make a great TikTok. And I was, you know, I think in the thing I said, you know, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. And you know, he's bringing the laundry down 13, not flights of stairs, 13 stairs to go to the laundromat down the street. And that was my first viral video, 795,000 views. I remember like the number. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I'd never experienced anything like that. And I was like, wow. And so I don't try and do rage bait on purpose, but at the same time, I understand. I understand that TLC is like, nobody's gonna watch some Christian conservative family make tater tot casserole anymore. We need to make this interesting. So, you know, enter the villain edit. And it's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. So, for instance, the scene where Mark and Eric like going back and forth about the house and, you know, like, oh, it's so much in rent. The honest truth is Mark actually found this place before I did. And he's like, yeah, I found this place, but I didn't know. And I was like, oh yeah, I found that place too. So like we were actually in total agreement about renting this place. We both thought things were gonna go better financially. Also, like meeting Pearl's boyfriend, we actually met him, if all my OGs know this, at not this year's Easter vlog, but the previous year's Easter vlog. That's when we actually met him. So if you want to see like the actual meeting. And then when we met Eleanor, I think we met her the day before. I forget if I vlogged that or not. And I wasn't really so upset about Josiah getting married. You know, a Christian conservative, like I believe that if, you know, for marital intimacy should only like happen in marriage, you know? So it's like, it's important to get married instead of giving into your passions, I feel like. But at the same time, I did tell him, you know, it would be a really smart thing to have like 2 years of law school under your belt before you get married. And he gets kind of like really obsessed. You need to chill out. You can't text constantly. You need to focus on your studies. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm like a bit of a tiger mom. I will admit that. But it wasn't like what was portrayed. You know, what was portrayed was, you know, rage bait. Let's be honest. I don't know why it always had to be me. I was a bad guy, but I think especially after like Ruby Frankie and moms are just a low-hanging fruit. You know, it's easy to be like, obviously the mother is the problem, you know? It's like, well, okay, I'll take it. And then what else? I don't know, oh, the mother, wives and mothers thing. What's so funny about that was that just that weekend, Naomi, I was telling her, well, I have to vlog to help pay the bills. Like, you know, like she was kind of annoyed that I was busy doing my vlog thing. And I was like, well, like, you know, we're trying to make money for our family. And she's like, well, you know, I'm gonna marry a guy that can support me, so I don't have to, you know. And I'm like, so anyway, the whole thing, like, oh, like these girls are just, you know, really want to have a career and like, you know, never get married. Like that's not how they feel. And so what happens is like, there's kind of a narrative they're going for, like, oh, you know, maybe you could say it this way. So say this thing, and then edits are like an eye roll or something from a different thing, not in response to what I said. So we're basically actors playing ourselves. Yeah, that was, you know, a little bit contrived, but that's how you make the sausage nowadays. No one wants to see you make tater tot casserole anymore. You know, you have to like add some spiciness. So anyway, so we added the spice, and then people were like, oh, I saw a different side of you. I'm like, well, if you look at my vlogs, you'll see when we actually met Adam, okay? If you know, the truth about Adam did end up breaking up with Pearl, so, you know, bullet dodge, who was not the right person. But really what happened was Adam actually called Mark and he's like, hey, I'd like to date your daughter. And so like super sweet, like super, like not the goofy, and but people want to be entertained. They're not gonna, you know, it's not like if they want to watch a sappy family make snacks, you can go to YouTube. That's the thing that was different in when the Duggars were really popular. The Duggars were super popular, like millions and millions and millions of views. In fact, I think they made so much money off of the Duggars that they were able to like buy Time Warner or something. It was back and forth, some weird thing. Like it was very successful. I could be totally wrong about that, but anyway, it was a very financially successful show. And but what was not happening in like 2010 YouTube? I mean, it was a little bit. It was like cat videos, you know, and like, you know, Charlie bit my finger, like that sort of thing. But it was not like 2015 is really when like the family vlog really took off. And so I do feel though that like, so our pastor's actually working on doing a media company that's kind of Christian oriented. I do feel like a well edited, not necessarily documentary, but just kind of the reality that like you see with like the Bates family or whatever. Like I think there's a market for that, you know. But I think TLC has a different audience now. The things that really do well are, you know, like Sister Wives. I think Sister Wives is very successful, and that's like a, you know, I think a Mormon guy with a lot of wives. And then, or now there's a new show called Polyfamily, which is like two, a man and a woman and a man and a woman. They have this like love, not triangle, but I guess love square or something. I'm like, okay. Like that's the sort of thing that works nowadays. And I'm like, are people really going for this? And it's like, I look at the comments, people are like, oh, I'm so glad you're, you know, showing a polyamorous family in a good light. So people are going for it, you know, and it's like, you know, that sells. And, you know, a Christian conservative family just not breaking apart is uninteresting, but maybe not to like a specifically Christian audience. So, you know, there may be kind of an opening for it, that niche, with like another media company that really caters to that sort of content. So who knows? TLC, I think, I didn't talk to them directly, but I think our management company said that, you know, Bailyn Out Loud, she's the girl with Tourette's, and like she randomly swears at people and calls people bald. And the Baldwins like got higher ratings, so they're gonna, I guess, go with those shows. I don't know if they're gonna like, they don't like say like, they didn't give us any insider information or whatever, like what's gonna happen season 2 or whatever, but so they're not gonna make a series of our show. And on some levels I was just relieved, because I definitely saw, I guess what I thought was that people would see through the villain edit and be like, oh, you know, this is acting. But a lot of people didn't see it. And so I'm like, okay, people aren't getting it. So I think it was not necessarily an inaccurate portrayal, but it was an entertaining portrayal. And it was a rage baity portrayal, but not too rage baity, just a little bit rage baity. But no, I mean, Pearl's honest with me. I mean, like she had the boy call, you know, before they were even dating, and she's been honest with me about things. Josiah, he was a little sneaky. He went and got engaged without saying, hey, I'm gonna go get engaged. And I think part of that was just he had no job. I mean, he had nothing. Just saying, you can't live in the basement. You know, you need to like be able to support your wife. You need to be able to support your family. You need to be able to, if you want to get married, and he had no job, nothing, you know. So I think that's why he like got engaged on the slide. But whatever, if you see the wedding video, I'm actually really, really grateful. Oh, she's such a nice girl. And Josiah is a unique kid. He is not normal. I mean, in a good way though. He has really weird interests. If you watch this year's Easter vlog, he invited like a 7th French cousin, and he's part of this Facebook group related to some nobility from 1542 in France or whatever, and like tracing all the lineages. And so the guy that he invited, this family, the guy was like tracing the lineage, like, oh, this family branched off to this family, and then how are they connected? Like, and Josiah was in like just rapt attention, you know, and this guy, he's speaking in French, and the rest of us are just like, what do we talk about on Easter? I'm like, jelly beans are good, you know. This is what our conversation on the other side of the table was. So he is a unique person. And Eleanor, she is so sweet. She just goes along. She enjoys, I think, that quirkiness. And like, I think there's a lot of young ladies that would not. Be like, okay, that's weird. So that's another non-empty-handed thing I feel like we're coming back with, is we have Eleanor, and she is a gem. I know I don't own her, it's just that, you know, but I feel like a little, she's my daughter-in-law, I kind of own her, right? Some level of ownership there. And Josiah, okay, this is the other thing. People are like, oh, you know, why do you have your kids, you know, study music? Because I don't have them study music. If they want to study music, you know, at the college level, that's obviously their thing. But Josiah, he applied to some different law schools, and from Temple, and he got accepted to a number of them, but from Temple University, they gave him a handwritten card, and it said, I wish I took a picture of it, it was handwritten, and it said, we would like to offer you a full scholarship to Temple University. Really enjoy that you are a musician, and that you're graduating from Manhattan School of Music, and that's just we really feel it would be a good fit for our law school, because we're looking for students with diverse educational backgrounds. And you know, that's, being a musician is you know, if you're gonna do law, it's good to have not everybody go to like poli-sci, you know, political science, law school, political science, law school. It's good to have like musicians, mathematicians, scientists. It's good to have people that did undergrad in different things go to law school and be lawyers, because it just gives a full coloring to law, which can change people's life. full circle. The lawsuit, right? That changed our lives. Well, he hasn't actually sued us yet. But anyway, all things do work together for good. I don't necessarily feel like it was a mistake to do the TLC thing. There were other people that proposed doing shows. So the person that proposed the show to us that was affiliated with TLC, like we kind of went with him because he's a really nice guy, you know, kind of fun. But there were other people that were like, oh, we'll just kind of do it documentary style and just kind of follow you guys around. That probably, hindsight being 2020, would have been a better fit for our family because then they wouldn't have to like manufacture all the drama. But I mean, it was kind of fun being actors playing ourselves. Like I never have done that. I've never, you know, I was always like my only acting role was an extra nun in The Sound of Music in musical theater when I was in high school. So yeah, no acting for me. So it was fun to say it with feeling, say it like this, look at the camera. That was cool. Like that was an experience. I think it's an experience the kids will never forget. I kind of would like to have not had the villain edit, but it's okay. Someone's got to do it. I don't know what the future holds. It could be, you know, that something miraculous happens for us, and it could be that the miracle is that we have a driveway in San Diego to get our feet back under us and we can vlog the experience of driving through middle America, which is an experience. I feel like everybody should do that. It is so fun to drive, and like it's kind of scary. There are parts of Wyoming where you could drive for forever and not find a gas station, which is frightening when you're by the side of the road and you're like, we don't have gas. So you have to plan, just this word to the wise, if you are going to plan a trip across America, be very careful in Wyoming that you fuel up when you can. Okay. Oh, and the other thing, if you are planning a trip with a trailer, definitely get trailer brakes. There are 2 parts in our journey that are so scary, and they're both in California. The Grapevine. This is what you may not think. Okay, like when you're just driving a little car and like doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, you just like whoop over the Grapevine in California. But you see those trucks by the side of the road with their emergency flashers on? There's a reason for that. And what ends up happening, and it's not the like you would think the uphill would be hard because you're towing 10,000 pounds. No, the uphill is like, yay. Downhill. Downhill is the terror. The terror. Okay, so you have to downshift in your transmission, and you know we tried to do this with this 10,000 pound trailer without trailer brakes in the wheels. In San Francisco, we got trailer brakes because that is, oh yeah, that is terrifying. Because comes a point where you overheat your brakes and they just stop working. It's like, it's terrifying. That's why they have those in California. They have those things where you can go up the hill, like they call it a runaway truck ramp. It's like all these things. When I went up and down the coast of California with my parents, we were always like in a Toyota Camry. So I would see all these like runaway truck ramps and all these things. I was like, what's that for? Silly California. But we almost took the runaway truck ramp when we didn't have trailer brakes, because when you can't stop and you're going 100 miles an hour almost with a 10,000 pound trailer behind you, there's a terror involved in that. The other thing is the Donner Pass going, I don't know if it's in California, but it's going kind of into, yeah, basically into I think it's in California. That is very scary. But I will say, if you've driven with a 10,000 pound trailer without trailer brakes, and then you've driven with a 10,000 pound trailer with trailer brakes, it's much easier with trailer brakes. Also, our van does have, I think, a trailer mode or something where you can, shift the transmission to a lower gear, which when you're going downhill, that really helps. So these are just tips in case you see our journey across the country and you're like, that looks like fun. And I'm like, yes, it's fun if you must have some equipment on your car. So we have not had the trailer. And what's so funny is like one of our most, like the videos we get the most hate comments on, I did a how we sleep in the trailer video. And I was just, people were like, oh, I'd love to see how you sleep. I had no idea. I think like that got like 12 million views on YouTube, and like probably more than that on TikTok and a ton on. People were like, oh, you have kids on the floor, like, so I'm like, okay. Yeah, so we just make it work. And people sleep where they want. They're like, why don't you have the kids in bed with you? It's like, not a lot of people want to like sleep with their parents. That's kind of weird. And then I'm usually I was like, I think that was when I had Moses. I think I was nursing Moses. So like nursing him out, like, you know, out on the floor where everyone's looking, that would be weird. Then I get hate comments for that. You cannot avoid the hate no matter what you post. So that's kind of our plan. If nothing else works out, is to just kind of meander our way to San Diego and try and get our life back together. And like I said, I don't feel we're coming back empty-handed. I feel like we have a lot to show for it. I feel like our kids have learned things that are just miraculous, and they have amazing ability, and it's been a really good experience. There's a video by, if you want to have a laugh, you can look it up. It's by Van Neistat, and he talks about New York City, and he talks about it. He's like, you know, New York City, if you're rich, is a great place. If you're poor, not so much. And it's funny, when I saw that, I was like, no, New York City, it must be so fun riding the subway. What are you talking about, Van Neistat? And, you know, he talks about how the weather, and it's constantly raining, and it's constantly, you know, and I was just, you look at that, you know, I was watching that video in like San Francisco, California, and I was like, what's he talking about? New York's so fun. Look at all those videos of it. It's so fun. It's hard. It is a grind. And he says it is really hard to live in New York City, but he feels like everyone should have to live in New York City, like the draft, because it's like, puts hair on your chest. It changes you. And that's true. I feel like we come back changed. Those of us that, you know, basically the kids that are not over 18, you know, we're coming back with. Anyway, so we tried. I feel like, you know, I was just telling the manager, I was like, they're like, oh, a lot of people live in Queens or Long Island, or I was like, yeah, and I'm not against trying, but, you know, I'm not against trying to make something work out in New York City if we can figure something out, but I am weary of the hamster wheel. I'm weary of just like barely getting by, fighting, and, you know, basically, if we're moving from one difficult situation to another difficult situation, in that, you know, now we've got 2-hour train ride to get into the city from Long Island or whatever, you know, that seems insupportable too, you know, because we can't live our life in a train. And if we are going to be doing, like, if we're doing 2-hour train rides anyway, you know, for everything, because for Mark's work, for the school, for everything, you know, we might as well. There's a 3-hour train ride from San Diego to Colburn pre-college. The kids tell me Colburn's even harder to get into than Juilliard. But, you know, I mean, like, if we're going to be taking trains, we might as well, you know, take a train from a place where we have some level of support. But I don't know. We have a lot of work ahead of us, moving a family of our size, and all of our stuff is expensive, and it's hard. And I'm not looking forward to it, but I am looking forward to purging things. What's really sweet is someone sent us like a planter box. You know, like Naomi was so excited about all the stuff she was going to plant in the backyard, and that's been short-circuited by our news. But somebody sent us like a planter thing that has, it's almost like a honeycomb, and it has like different little planter spots in it so we can grow herbs and carrots. And I saw somebody, Acre Homestead, was growing strawberries in it. And so we're gonna, we haven't unboxed that. We're gonna bring it with us. And, you know, even if we're like, you know, living from the driveway, like Naomi will still be able to have her little garden. I don't know, it's probably not the best time to start, you know, late August, but it's San Diego, so, you know, you don't have like that frost that kills it off. Well, it does get cold, but it'll last a little longer in San Diego. So we'll still try gardening a bit. But anyway, so just keep us in your prayers. Just pray that God would give us wisdom. We're still, you know, trying to exhaust every possibility here, but we need to not be, it's not like we don't need to not be so hopeful, but not so like mindlessly hopeful, you know, and not even mindlessly hopeful, like just uninformedly hopeful. I feel like, I don't feel like it was a mistake for us to come here, but I feel like we've gained a lot of knowledge. We've also gained the knowledge of some level of practicality that we were apparently missing before. Anyway, so pray for us, and we'll keep you posted. Love you.